In the rugged expanse of the Appalachian wilderness, there exists a stretch of woods shrouded in stories and warnings, Old Hollow. The locals, a tight-knit community of mountain folk who respect the whispers of their ancestors, advise all who visit their small, secluded town, do not go into the woods. Despite such warnings, many curious souls and thrill-seekers find the lure of Old Hollow irresistible. The story centers around 4 college students: Jack, an adventurous and charismatic leader; Mia, a studious biologist; Eric, a tech-savvy drone enthusiast; and Olivia, a folklore major fascinated by local legends. Driven by curiosity and the thrill of a senior-year adventure, they decide to spend a weekend camping in Old Hollow, aiming to document their experiences for a thesis project on modern superstitions and ghost stories. Upon their arrival, they were met with stern looks and even sterner warnings from the locals at a small general store where they stopped for supplies. An old man, who introduced himself as Harlan, leaned in close from where he sat on a rocking chair by the door, his voice low and raspy. "Those woods ain't just empty land, they're filled with memories, and not all of them are kind." Undeterred, the group pressed on, setting up their base camp at the edge of the woods. As they ventured deeper into Old Hollow, the trees grew denser, the path muddier, and the sounds of civilization faded until all that was left was the untouched wilderness and the occasional distant howl of a wolf. Eric's drones flew overhead, sending back crisp footage of the sprawling forest canopy, while Mia collected samples of flora and fauna, noting the remarkable biodiversity of the region. Olivia recorded their journey, narrating into her camera about the legends of Old Hollow, stories of spirits that moved in the mist and shadows that whispered between the trees. As night fell on their first day, the group gathered around the campfire. The flickering flames cast eerie shadows, and every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves sent shivers down their spines. Jack, ever the storyteller, began to recount one of the tales Olivia had mentioned earlier, about a lost settler from the 1800s who wandered into these woods and was never seen again, except, it was said, as a ghostly figure that sometimes followed lone hikers. They laughed off the story, attributing the unease to the natural creepiness of the woods at night. However, as they settled into their tents, the sense of being watched grew stronger, and the forest seemed alive with subtle movements just beyond the reach of their camp lights. The next morning, the group woke to find their campsite in disarray. Their supplies were scattered, and large, unidentifiable footprints were found near the camp's perimeter. Uneasy but rational, they theorized about bears and other wildlife, deciding to set up cameras around the campsite with motion sensors before heading deeper into the forest. That day, Mia pointed out an unusually thick fog rolling in from the north, which was odd for the time of year. The fog seemed to swallow the sounds, creating an oppressive silence that dampened their spirits. They stumbled upon an old, dilapidated cabin, half consumed by the forest. It wasn't on any map, and curiosity got the best of them as they decided to explore inside. The cabin was a time capsule, filled with relics of a bygone era: a rusted rifle, a broken lantern, and a diary belonging to a woodsman who wrote of whispers in the fog and eyes that watched from the dark. The last entry was a frantic scrawl: "They don't want us here. We should never have come." As darkness began to fall, the group hurried back to camp, unnerved by their findings and the growing fog. When they arrived, they found their motion sensor cameras triggered, but the footage showed only glimpses of fleeting shadows, too fast and too formless to identify. That night, as they huddled by the fire, the forest noises ceased completely. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The fog encroached, thicker now, creeping into the campsite like a living thing. The temperature dropped, breaths turning to mist, and the campfire struggled to stay lit. It was then that they heard it, a low, mournful howl not far from camp, a sound that seemed both human and animal, full of sorrow and warning. Grabbing their flashlights, they shone them into the trees where the sound had come from, but the light seemed to be swallowed by the fog. Feeling vulnerable and realizing their situation might be more dangerous than they thought, they debated leaving but decided against it, not wanting to navigate the woods in such thick fog at night. As they tried to settle down, the howl came again, Closer this time, a sound that chilled their bones and made their decision feel like a grave mistake. The eeriness was palpable, the forest alive with an ancient, watching presence that didn't appreciate intruders. Olivia, her voice barely a whisper, suggested they document everything, turning their predicament into an integral part of their project. The cameras were readied, their lenses piercing the darkness, searching for any sign of the mysterious howler. Yet, every attempt to capture the source of the sounds came up empty. Nothing appeared on their screens except the dense fog and the black outlines of trees. Eric's drone, which had been set to record from above, suddenly lost connection, the screen going static before blacking out entirely. When it finally came back online, the drone was on the ground, its camera facing up at a canopy that seemed to move even without wind. The footage was shaky, glimpses of something moving fast between the trees, something that wasn't quite animal yet not human. Jack, ever the protector, kept a close watch on the perimeter, his flashlight cutting through the fog in sharp, quick sweeps. He suggested they set up a tighter camp, moving everything closer to the fire, which they fueled more heavily to push back against the encroaching mist. As they consolidated their camp, Mia noted a significant drop in temperature, her scientific mind struggling to rationalize the rapid changes in their environment. "This isn't normal," she murmured, scanning her surroundings with a thermal camera, which showed an inexplicable cold spot moving around the campsite, circling them like a predator stalking its prey. The group huddled close, the fire casting long, dancing shadows as they recounted each strange event, trying to piece together a logical explanation. Olivia, her voice tinged with fear, revisited the woodsman's diary, reading aloud passages that hinted at an old curse placed upon the woods by a heartbroken settler whose family had vanished without a trace in the very same forest. Their discussion was suddenly cut short by a sharp crack from the woods, a sound of something heavy stepping on a dry branch. The noise was followed by a rustling that seemed to encircle the camp. Each member of the group turned back to back, their flashlights darting from tree to tree, searching for the source of the disturbance. Suddenly, the cold spot on Mia's thermal camera stopped moving, settling directly behind the tree line. As they focused their lights in that direction, the fog seemed to part momentarily, and they caught sight of a figure, tall, its eyes reflecting the light from their flashlights like those of an animal. The figure stood motionless, watching them, before it retreated back into the fog with an unnerving agility. Panic set in, the reality of their situation becoming terrifyingly clear. They were not alone in Old Hollow, they were being hunted by something that called this forest home, something that perhaps had claimed many others who had dared to venture into these woods. Determined to make it through the night, they decided to take turns keeping watch, not allowing the fire to die down. As Jack took the first watch, the others tried to rest, though sleep was elusive under the heavy blanket of fear that lay upon them. Hours passed, and when it was Mia's turn to keep watch, she noticed an eerie glow in the distance, unlike the natural luminescence of fireflies. It was a soft, blue light, wavering like a flame in a draught. Captivated and fearful, she woke the others. Together, they watched the light as it grew brighter, then dimmer, pulsing in rhythm with their own heightened heartbeats. Compelled by a mix of terror and the need for answers, they debated whether to approach the light. As they deliberated, a sudden clarity struck Olivia. She recalled a part of the woodsman's diary that described a beacon of the lost, a mysterious light that appeared to those who were about to discover the wood's deepest secrets or fall victim to its darkest depths. As they prepared to follow the light, the earlier howl echoed through the trees once more, this time accompanied by a chorus of whispers, as if the forest itself was speaking to them. The whispers seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, increasing in intensity as they made their decision to venture deeper into the heart of Old Hollow. The story pauses here, with the group standing on the brink of a dark discovery, the beckoning light guiding them further into the woods. The unknown nature of their stalker and the origins of the mysterious light remain concealed, shrouded by the dense fog and the enigmatic whispers of Old Hollow. As they stepped cautiously toward the enigmatic light, each member of the group felt the oppressive weight of the unseen eyes watching them, the whispers growing into an almost palpable presence around them. The forest seemed alive, aware, and actively participating in their ordeal. The light flickered through the dense trees like a will-o'-the-wisp, leading them deeper into the unknown. The fog thickened, swallowing up the path behind them, cutting off any thoughts of retreat. With each step, the soil beneath their feet felt softer, wetter, as if they were walking into the marshy lungs of the forest. Mia's thermal camera continued to pick up the chilling presence of the cold spot, now moving parallel to their path, just out of sight but ever present. Jack, who had taken the lead, stopped abruptly. Before them stood a clearing, unnatural in its perfect circular shape. The light they had been following hovered in the center, casting an eerie glow that illuminated the faces of the group, each marked with a mixture of fear and fascination. In the heart of the clearing, amidst the ghostly light, lay a stone altar, ancient and moss-covered. Carvings that resembled no known language adorned its sides, pulsing faintly with a luminescence that matched the hovering light. The ground around the altar was barren, the earth scorched as if by fire, and the air was tinged with a faint, metallic smell. Olivia, her interest in folklore overcoming her fear, stepped forward to inspect the carvings more closely. As she did, the whispers crescendoed into a loud, dissonant chant, causing the group to clutch their ears in pain. The ground beneath the altar began to rumble, small fissures forming in the earth. Realizing the danger, Eric yelled for everyone to move back, but Olivia was transfixed, her eyes locked on the glowing carvings. With a desperate rush, Jack grabbed her arm, pulling her away just as the altar cracked open, releasing a blinding light and a shockwave that knocked them to the ground. When they looked back, the altar had split in two, revealing a dark cavity beneath. From this abyss, a dense, black mist began to rise, swirling and coalescing into the form of a large, shadowy figure. The figure stood taller than any man, its form indistinct but its presence terrifyingly clear. The group scrambled to their feet, the instinct to flee overtaking their curiosity. But the forest around them had changed, the trees seemed to close in, branches intertwining to form a barrier that trapped them in the clearing with the entity. The whispers turned into a mocking laughter, echoing through the trees as the figure advanced. Mia, her voice trembling, pointed her thermal camera at the figure, revealing no heat signature, an entity of pure coldness, a void in the shape of a man. As it moved closer, the temperature dropped sharply, their breaths visible in the air, their faces numb with the cold. With nowhere to run, they backed away until they were pressed against the cold, twisting branches of the trees. The entity stopped at the edge of the altar's shadow, its form seeming to pulsate with the dark mist that had birthed it. Then, in a voice that resonated deep within their chests, it spoke, its words clear despite the continuing laughter and whispers of the forest. "You have freed me," it said, a statement that chilled them more profoundly than the air around them. "For that, you shall remain, as guardians of this place, until another takes your place." Before they could react, the dark mist surged forward, enveloping them in cold darkness. Their screams were muffled by the thick mist, their forms disappearing from view as if swallowed by the forest itself. The story ends here, leaving the fate of the group unknown, their last moments a testament to the ancient and unspeakable horror that lurks in Old Hollow. The forest remains, a brooding presence in the mountains, its secrets hidden by the fog and protected by the whispers and shadows. Any who dare to enter, enticed by curiosity or bravery, risk becoming part of the legend, another whisper in the endless chorus of Old Hollow.